4 sequels after that. And it's not in order, but it started with Planet of the Apes, and then, you know, the other 4 were various names: Escape from the Planet of the Apes, Beneath the Planet of the Apes,
Return to the
Content, you know, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and Return to the Planet of the Apes. And like, yeah, which the order is, I'm not really sure ever. I haven't got that burned into my mind. So the astronauts are traveling through time in their spaceship, and they, you know, they have some kind of a suspended animation, you know, sleeping for, you know, decade after decade kind of thing. And we're going to show the movie here in our amphitheater on July 30th. And but anyway, long story short is when they crash land, they land in what's now Lake Mead. And I think it was there back then, of course, but it's a part of Glen Canyon National Recreation Area, which I think spans Nevada and Arizona. So it's in the National Park Service. The dam is run probably by the Army Corps of Engineers. So they splash down there and they walk through the desert, which is Glen Canyon National Recreation Area, which is just really lots of sandstone-shaped rocks of smoothness and ruggedness. And then they appear in the park, which one of our last stops is the rock pool, and that's where they find water to go swimming after that trek across the desert. So there, you know, Charlton Heston and the other 2, you know, astronauts are marveling over these people, and it turned out they're like, you know, they don't really talk, and you know, they're really just on the lower rung, if you will, as you may know from the movie. Then all of a sudden, you see these gorillas on horseback with rifles, and they start firing indiscriminately at everybody. And Charlton Heston, you know, he's, you know, totally shocked, as the other 2 astronauts are, and they run for their lives. Now here's a comparison shot: the 3 astronauts with the then and now, and we're looking right out that direction. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Of course, they had their spacesuits stolen up the road toward the freeway. Otherwise, we would have this here year-round. We'll tell you that our park rules for safety is that there's no diving here, but people ignore it. But the Grasslands Trail, as it's known, it keeps on going, and it would eventually kind of rides the tops of the grassy hillsides, and it'll eventually take you over to Mulholland, and then even go a little bit further after you cross Mulholland there. So you can get just a $2 map that's very good at the entrance station, no tax, $2. And then when we're formally open in the visitor center, but we're not going to be open, I understand, today because we don't have the docents to staff it. But we're going in because we've got the key.
Private.
Right.
Showing.
Yeah, private showing there, so you'll have the place to yourself. It's not going to be all set up, but at least you'll get a peek, and I wanted you to see that video, so that's the important part. Set structure from Dr. Dolittle, 1967. I know there was a later one made. Is that Eddie Murphy?
Eddie Murphy.
Yeah. So it's a English estate there, and Dr. Doodles, but they also filmed over somewhere in the United Kingdom. But they had scenes out here, and what was great is they had access to more trained, supposedly wild animals. If you hadn't ever heard of it, there was a place called Jungle Land that was in Thousand Oaks, kind of where the Civic Center is today, in that theater and all, and through there somewhere. And they had all manner of wild animals, but they also took them in, you know, for productions that care for them. And so they got a giraffe from there that Rex Harrison rode, a rhinoceros they got. You know, they might have gotten that somewhere else, I don't know, by species, what animals they had at Jungle Land. But all the animals were fairly trained to allow them to do that. I mean, it was gutsy to get on the back of a rhinoceros. But you know, you see it. I haven't seen the movie. It just didn't really draw my interest enough, and I tried it the first and only time.
That was Rex Harrison.
Yeah, 1967, British actor. But what's interesting is what you see in the background over the hills there. Do you recognize anything? What?
The pool.
The screen? Yeah, it was taken from like on a slope up there, looking down on it. So you see the sky backing there, of course, and then there's this. It was over in the parking lot area as well. It was a fake mountain built that was in a movie with Frank Sinatra called Von Ryan's Express, and there's a scene there where they, you see both a real one, then you're here from a distance, because I think there's an explosion in the scene where it's a miniature. By the way, a train going through a tunnel cutting the mountain there. So that's what that was all about. Come back a little bit, so we like Quonset huts, if you will, for an army comedy movie called Wake Me When It's Over. So that's what that is. But yeah, that was right back there. A movie was made called The Sand Pebbles. One of my favorite actors, Steve Mcqueen, a cool guy, a bit of a loner, didn't get in the whole Hollywood crowd kind of thing, but he was kind of a man's man, motorcycle racer, and loved motorcycles and all. He did, a lot of movies that had lots of action in them. So they filmed a lot of this over in, I don't know, it was either Singapore or Hong Kong, but it was about the early Civil War in China back in the earlier 1900s. I can't throw out the decade offhand. So a lot of it was filmed there, and they were Navy men on a ship, and they were in there to protect, whatever Americans or whoever was there, and so they were dealing with the Chinese army and all. Come on, make sure there's people got room behind you there to walk. But they did do one significant bit of filming here, and it's hard to see, but because the tree blocks it. But if you just look up and you see how the grass kind of slopes up a little bit right there. So they had built a platform of dirt, and so bulldozers were in there likely, shaping it all up. And so if you were there, or when you're up there above, I think it's really best seen in the spring, because what happens is that you can see the footprint outline of that rectangle up there. So this is one of the better shots. We haven't got like the holy grail shots, as a friend of mine would say, but that's the China Light mission that they built here for the movie. Again, this is the Sand Pebbles, 1966. If I've got that right. And it's more or less toward the end of the movie. There's a big, huge courtyard there, and that's a lot of where the scene took place. It was in the courtyard and all. That was right up there. And then at one time, this road went that way, and then there was another road that kind of went out that way, and they built this village of adobe stucco homes, depending on where the movie setting was. Sometimes the roofs were thatched grass, other times they were Spanish tiles, if you will. So one of my favorite movies is Love is a Many Splendored Thing. The song is really quite romantic. Two lovers, up on a windy hill, two lovers kissed and the world stood still. And so they filmed this scene here using that village when they visited the lead actress, who was Jennifer Jones, and she played a Eurasian surgeon doctor in China, Hong Kong. I was getting Hong Kong and Singapore mixed up. I need to straighten that out. But anyway, here are the two lead actors, Jennifer Jones, this Han Su-ying, who was in real life a real doctor, and I was surprised, it was probably several years ago, but I actually saw she died, and I think this movie may have came from the book or something of her stories of this period back then. It was approaching the Korean War, and so it was on the cusp of it, and William Holden, the leading man, he was a correspondent. In this case, he was covering what was going on in China. And they met in the city and fell in love, and that was the beautiful story of it. So this village was used for some of the scenes. Some of this got cut out of the actual movie of when she takes him to meet her family. But that high and windy hill, I had access to production reports from the studio, and on Love is a Many Splendid Thing, for when it had a line for the high and windy hill, I'm calling it that. because they always would meet up at this hill, at this tree. He would come up first, or she would, and then they'd meet and all. And then for location, all it has on this sheet is capital letters NR. So I want to say that means near ranch. So one of my other docents who does research as well, Brian Rooney, who has a book out. It's called 3 Magical Miles, Fabulous History of this Park and 3 miles around here. But he realized in rewatching the films and scenes that they were at a much higher elevation. So one day we went up Piuma Road, which snakes up to the east, up in the hills over that way. And sure enough, we pulled off somewhere and walked up a bare little section there and went up a slope. And as we got up top, there's the view. So we knew it was from up there somewhere. The Left Hand of God with Humphrey Bogart, who was a very big star with Warner Brothers. And he was portraying falsely a priest, a father of a mission that he ran into. He had been shot down in World War II, and he just stayed there, an evasive person, because he was dealing with Chinese and all, and then he got kind of caught up with some warlord and didn't like him and broke away again, and so he's kind of on the run as a loner, and he came upon this priest who was on his way to the mission to take over, but he was dying, and Humphrey Bogart was there to care for him for a short period of time and said, "Oh, I have a disguise." So he put on the priest's, clothing and showed up, and they thought he was a real deal, but it was a place to hide out. So you'll see a film clip of this in the video. He's a priest, but he still shows his tough guy. The 60s that shot out here in the early years was the Rifleman, and that's Chuck Connors. The star is Lucas Mcqueen. I know I need to print up more of these laminated photos because there's so much more to show you. The actor who played his son, Johnny Crawford, he's recently passed away, but Brian made contact with him at a presentation. He was just there to visit, and so Brian got his okay for him to come out here dressed in a Western outfit and hold a photo of him and Chuck Connors together with the goat buttes in the background. And so he's sitting there holding this, and it was like a beautiful opportunity. And he did that also recently with Linda Harrison, which is pretty much the last remaining member of the main cast of Planet of the Apes. So she was one of these subhumans, I always call them, and she kind of, hung around with Charlton Heston, kind of a boyfriend-girlfriend thing, and he was, protecting her. But he had her out here too. So they had a ranch set that just out in that field, a little bit more to the left there, which we could probably grab in the other shade there. But you just see how the landscape, the grasslands are dotted with these oaks here, just like it is today, lower growth ones. They both over the dam, and the volume really picks up in speed and even brings some fish over the dam. And so there's a short season of fishing here in the creek.
So historically it has flooded so much that we'd be underwater standing right here.
Is that right? Wow.
So this is like the view of the Goat Buttes. This is the best you'll get up there. And if there was water in the creek, this would be a beautiful photo, even more so. But those are the famous, beautiful Goat Buttes. And it's just a story. It's not like written in fact that I've been told about. But the Goat Buttes name is said to be because the Christ Country Club, like some smart people, they'll have sheep or goats grazing like lawnmowers. And they were grazing even up there on the hillside. So it sounds like a plausible tale. But since we're not going out there, I'll just point out, well, for any future visits and cooler weather, perhaps we encourage you to come back. But you can go around to where we're going to come to the fork and go more or less to the left. When you cross the bridge onto the other side there, you'll see the visitor center that we'll see to the right, but if you turn left, you'd be able to walk along a dirt road all the way at the base of that slope over there.